Reasons to end DACA. DACA stands for the Deferred Action for Early Arrival. It started by President Obama in 2012. There are qualification or eligibility or requirement you have to meet in order for you to get that DACA status. But I'm gonna give out my top reasons why we should end DACA. 2017 Super Bowl, sometime in early February, you got this commercial about a woman and a child crossing the border, and they reached the border and they looked up into the U.S. border wall. So in their mind, they have that incentive to rather cross it or not cross it. But if you think about it, if you look at that video and you think about it logically, is that these people put themselves at risk. For number one is that woman could have been raped, could have been killed, could have been used for slaves, could have been used for prostitution. And two is that child, you put that child's life in danger. When you walk that person across the border, that child could have been got into a heat injury, heat cramp, heat disease, heat exhaustion, and you could have killed that kid easily. You pretty much put that kid in risk. You got to use logic in your head. You can't be thinking of emotion. If you look at it emotionally, you let your emotion roll that. You let your emotion kicks in, and you say, "Oh, I feel sorry for the kid and the woman." It doesn't work that way. Number two is incentive. If you take away the incentive, you defeat the purpose of why they come here in the first place. If you give them free healthcare, free education, free social benefit, public benefit, such as you award them for them coming in illegally, which is breaking our immigration law, which is a felony, by the way, if you come to America illegally. And if you turn around and you award them with all these incentives and these awards, they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to go back home, and they're not going to try to go back to the country of origin to make their country better. They're going to come here and they're going to argue for their rights. They're going to do whatever it takes to challenge the U.S. law. A lot of people come here because they think that America is a safe haven, is the best place on earth. But a lot of people take advantage of the U.S. system, and the 14th Amendment. It was never meant for an illegal people to come over and then have babies and pop out babies just like that, and all of a sudden the U.S. citizen resident, U.S. government is supposed to give them a U.S. citizen status to the anchor baby. It doesn't work that way. The 14th Amendment was written so that slave, descendant of African American, could have rights. The 14th Amendment was never intended to be used by what the Democrats describe now, as that the liberal view is that as long as you're born in the United States, you are considered a U.S. citizen. That's not what the 14th Amendment said. The 14th Amendment only applies to slaves during the 1800s. It was resulted from a Dred Scott case, and it went up to the Supreme Court. Whether you were free or not, free or slave, it did not matter. You still consider not U.S. citizen. Scott took his case to the Supreme Court, and I think he appealed twice, and he won. And because of that Congress gave all slave U.S. citizen status. So 14th Amendment was never applied to any illegal immigrant that comes here over and then produce baby, and that baby all of a sudden, the anchor baby, become a U.S. citizen. It doesn't work that way. Then that will be challenged. You see a lot of these illegal immigrants that comes over, and they wanted their kid to have education, so they pushed them through public school, which is funded by U.S. citizen and legal resident through a taxpayer. There's a problem with that, is that first of all, they're not supposed to be here in the first place, and by entering our country illegally, it's a felony. And secondly, when you give them incentive to give them all this free stuff, is that they're not going to want to leave. They're going to want to stay and fight the system, fight the U.S. law. And because the only way to really change the society, the only way to really change U.S. law is by education. You got to change the mind of the people. You got to persuade them this way or that way. But when illegal immigrant children comes over and they go to public school and the school don't even oppose to that, that's because of this law back in 1982, Playa versus Doe, where it says you cannot discriminate based on their immigration status. So therefore, you have to let everybody in. And most public schools don't even ask for their social security number. They'll just let them in just like that. That's a no-no, man. That's not how the system works, man. If you're gonna be going to school that's paid for by public taxpayer, you better have your green card, you better have your social security number, you better have your ID. We have to enforce that law. You see a lot of illegal immigrant that comes over, most of which are unskilled, low-paid workers. Their country don't send them the best people. They send like the worst of the worst, the lowest of the lowest. They don't send them, PhD, engineer, scientists, doctors, nurses, and all that. They send these people that don't even have education. They don't even have a degree. So what entails is that when they work for low wages, and the U.S. company will take advantage of that. They see cheap labor. They said they make more money out of that by giving them small amount of money. At the same time, to take advantage of them, make them work for long hours. To me, illegal immigrants don't really produce that much income. They don't really make that major impact on the economy. For instance, in California, the illegal immigrant give in taxes, but it's less than like $100 million. That's nothing, man. That's like chump change. U.S. taxpayer pay in the order of $100 billion with the B to DHS, and these taxes include, money for DHS, money for security, border security, CBP, Border Patrol, ICE agent, to give them equipment, vehicles, to give them to do pretty much everything to enforce the immigration law. The word DACA is deferred action for child of earlyhood arrival. It means deferred, it doesn't say permanent. Okay, and that defer was during the Obama administration and is somehow pushed over to the Trump administration. And that deferment is already here and it's here now. Deferment means postponed to a later date. It doesn't say permanent. So don't think that it's permanent. If you receive DACA status, you shouldn't look. You should not look that way. You should look the other way. You should look like, hey, I should keep that in the forefront of my mind, saying someday I could be deported, and that deferment is here and it's now. I see a lot of illegal immigrants arguing that rights apply to everybody, even to them. It doesn't work that way. U.S. rights only apply to U.S. citizens. A legal immigrant have very little rights. They don't get the full rights that U.S. citizens do. U.S. citizens include U.S. native born, naturalized citizen, and sovereignty citizens such as the Native American, because they were here first. The U.S. Constitution only applied to U.S. citizen and legal resident. If you are not a U.S. citizen or legal resident, you have no rights to be here. Those rights don't apply to you. Like I said, rights, just like a member of a club. Rules only apply to members of the club. That U.S. law was written in the when the United States was formed, it was formed by the 13th colony, and the 13th colony got together and they wrote this Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution, preamble, and all that included. Those rights were only given to U.S. citizens. Rights were only given to U.S. citizens because you're not a member of a club, imply illegal immigrant. You do not have that right. In conclusion, I think we should make America great again. by doing so, by terminating DACA, let Congress pass law, enforce immigration law, build a wall, support ICE, and don't give them any kind of incentive. Don't give these people incentive to even come in the first place. You know, if you just enforce immigration law, you will get rid of 99% of the problem. And these illegal immigrants will leave on their own. You know, when you take away food stamp, you take away public benefit, free education, take away the DACA status, you pass law that prohibit employers from hiring illegal immigrants. You know, when you take away all that, you eventually get rid of illegal immigrants. They will leave on their own. When you take away all that, they eventually will leave on their own because they can't live in a place where they're not welcome.